What's up, guys? Welcome to Roensch Capital Charts. Today we're taking a look at Palantir technology stock, ticker symbol PLTR, on a variety of time frames in anticipation of the next trading day, Wednesday, February 21st. Well, guys, Palantir stock here today, finishing the day down about a point per share, 4.26%. Let's take a look at this name across a wide variety of time frames and just get contextual about tomorrow here. You know, for a lot of stocks, 4.26% is going to seem like a major move, but we've seen a lot of volatility out of Palantir as of late. And I mean, in all reality, a buck in either direction, especially if you're not breaking any major levels to the downside, is not all that crazy. But we have a few levels that we need to keep an eye on that came into play today. So let's start here by taking a look first off at the 1 minute chart. Now, the primary goal of these videos is always to look at the stock in a more macro context, short term, like for the next trading day. But here on the 1 minute chart, I really like to focus on scalping opportunity because I am a scalper at heart. It's what I do every single day. And it can help us look to, try and generate revenue around, I say this a lot, around a core position. Now, I would not say that Palantir was particularly in play today, which narrows our list of setups with provable statistical edge, positive expected value over a big sample size. It dwindles that down to a lot fewer setups. But if we take a look here just off the open, one thing that I was watching on Palantir was this little psychological bounce setup we had forming. We had this setup off of the -2 standard deviation band from volume weighted average price. This has been one of my backbone setups for years now, and it's had years of forward testing and has continuously proved to have statistical edge. But that is only the case if it's executed extremely well. Okay, channel width absolutely has to come into play here, and the way I calculate that is I'm looking at in this example that bottom band compared to the 20 EMA intraday. And you can see here that we're already a little tight. We're down to 22 cents, and with a tighter ratio, perhaps a 20-cent stop, 15-20-cent stop, and looking for 25 to 30-cent winners here, I prefer a channel with minimum of at least 25 cents. So it's already a little tight, and then it continued to tighten down into this test here. And the reason I didn't take this is because of that 20 EMA tightening down, continuing to do so as we come into that test. And you can see here, this is exactly the reason. Of course, it's just one scenario here, but the bigger sample size proves this to be the case. It oftentimes forces the stock to flatten out and then fade as it loses strength, at least bounce strength, right? Regardless of whether it's technically up or down on the day percentage-wise. Now, let's move on here and get more contextual about the day-to-day and look at the 5 minute chart here on Palantir, looking at volume, okay? Now, the reason I want to look at this is because we had this big downside move, and what I really want to look for is, did we see notable bumps in volume that lead us to believe that a big majority of the market agreed with this downside move in comparison to any upside moves that we did have? We have to take this contextually with time of day. For example, this big green candle off the open, we know that the open's going to have bigger volume than normal, right? So we have to take that into consideration. But on this downside move, we actually did see a little bit of bump in volume. So, bulls, just understand, while this is, of course, just one factor of many, just understand and be mature and understand that the bears are going to look at that, and the bears are going to like what they see there, okay? But again, we're talking one factor out of many factors. We have to put it all together and paint our bigger picture here. And it's also important to consider, just so that when you continue to watch these videos, hopefully if you're getting value out of these, hope to see you subscribe to the channel, understand that with each time frame that we go to, like the later in the video we get, the more, I would say, weight the context of that particular chart has over the next day, at least usually, okay? Because with each additional time frame that we look at, usually the way I've set it up on purpose, there's more eyeballs, right? And since I believe this is all a self-fulfilling prophecy, a psychological puzzle, I've set it up that way. So really, in my opinion, the factors get more and more important the later in the video we go. Just for context, if you decide to continue watching these, I hope you do. I think a lot of you will get value out of this, hopefully. So moving on here to the 30 minute, these are where things start to get really, really contextual for the following day. Now, from last Friday, we were discussing these moving averages, the 200 period moving average and the 50 period moving average. They were very much so in play. Now that the stock has moved downside here today, again, it's just one day, and Palantir is a volatile name as of late. We are now about 3.84% away from a test of the 50 period, and about 5.75% away from a test of the 200 period. So here's what I'm looking at on the 30 minute. Ideally, I would like to see this 50 period honestly continue a little bit downside, start to flatten out as the stock comes up and reclaims that. Okay, ideally from a bullish perspective, that's what I would want to see here on the 30 minute chart. And if you're a bear, it's kind of the exact opposite. You really want to see that 50 period move downside as quickly as possible, okay? And start putting pressure on the stock to break down through that level that we're going to talk about here, especially when we get to the daily, that $23 area. So now, moving on here to the 4 hour, you can see things start to get even more in play here on the 4 hour. That 50 period on the 4 hour chart is currently right around 23.90. That's not all that crazy away. That's less than 3% away for an upside test of that. So really clear here on the 4 hour. If I'm a bull, I'm looking at that and saying, I ideally just want to reclaim that 50 period as soon as possible here on the 4 hour. And if I'm a bear, any retest at all, I want to see a rejection, okay? And then that $23 area comes into play. Which now brings us to the most important chart of all. That's going to be the daily. And on the daily here, you can see that 50-day down at 1850, that 200-day down at 1650. We are left with really important psychological and technical levels to watch, okay? Price levels. Here's what I'm watching. So 23 is a technical level that we've had drawn, I mean, going back quite a long time here on Palantir. So if we look, 23 has clearly been noted here, just in the recent past. If I'm a bull, priority number 1, hold 23 as a support level. Priority number 2, make our way up and reclaim 25, ideally as quickly as possible. I mean, granted, keep in mind that 25 currently is about 6.8% away, okay? But we've seen crazier things on Palantir. Ideally, 25 is like the ultimate goal in the very short term on Palantir if you're a bull to reclaim. But just right now, step 1, just hold 23 ideally as a support level. If you are a bear, 25 is kind of your enemy, and your friend would be a break downside through 23. Bulls always understand the opposite side's psychology, so you can understand like what they would and wouldn't want to see, because you know that can obviously help you in understanding your own position better. But you know, bears, downside break at 23, looking for a downside test of 21.30 ideally. Bulls, hold 23, looking for an upside test of 25 as soon as possible. Options data. Let's take a look at the bias here. What are the traders thinking as we head into tomorrow? This is some heavy bias. 533,000 total contracts traded. That's a good sample size. We can get some great data out of there. 350,000 calls, 182,000 puts. So we are seeing rather heavy call bias here on Palantir today. That's not uncommon. We oftentimes see very heavy bias in the Palantir chain for whatever reason. The short-term speculators, the 0 to 20 delta range, those out-of-the-money, cheapy, gambly style calls and puts, 97,000 calls in that range versus 65,000 puts. So we're not only seeing overall call bias, we're also seeing short-term call bias. And then look at this, every single delta range is rather heavily weighted to the call side. So that's going to be out of the money, at the money, and in the money. And on average, time frame-wise, that's short-term, mid-term, and longer-term sentiment, all leaning to the bullish side here on the Palantir chain just from today. This is only today's data as we head into tomorrow, which is Wednesday. Again, guys, you know, the options traders, this is one factor of many putting together a puzzle here. The options traders can, of course, be wrong. Make sure your risk is managed. Always number 1, stay in the game. If you got value out of that video, please subscribe to the channel. I appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.